Okay, here we go. And action. Action.
I think the biggest challenge for me in photographing this movie was first being faithful to the time periods involved, one being the early 1900s and the other in the 1940s. And I think the most important thing and responsibility as a cinematographer, as it was to the director, the costume designer, the production designer, is that responsibility of faithfully reproducing that period so that you're, in a sense, not cheating the audience, because we expect a reality there that we're not used to seeing with our eyes every day. And if there's one thing that goes amiss, then it really stands out like a sore thumb.
We were flip-flopping time frames, time zones that were sort of living in young Anne, older Anne, and seeing how the two worlds connected. There's a huge audience out there who know Anne of Green Gables backwards and forwards. So my research had to base on what they understood as Anne's world and give the viewer still that world that they know that Anne exists in, or at least in their mind and what they've grown up with. So, you know, those are sort of my challenges of reproducing all the sets that we're going to deal with.
Because of the two time periods, I basically separated the two and studied what lighting was available in each of those two periods. So if we go back to the early 1900s, we know that electricity didn't exist per se in most places in Canada yet. So if it was a day scene, the lighting had to be motivated by light coming in through the window, whether it was a cloudy or sunny day, and how much that light bounced around the room. And then in the second period that was covered in 1940s, there was electricity now, so I could start introducing a feel of artificial sources from tungsten light sources, that kind of orangey glow that we associate with tungsten lighting and electricity of the era, combined with the palette of the period, the colors they used in their clothing and the colors they painted their walls.
A Dickensian look was where we were trying to push the film, I think. You start with that sort of texture, visual feel for the art department, and then we had another one which was light versus dark. A lot of streaming, you know, where the DP came involved with a lot of light hitting an actor, one actor only, leaving the other one in the dark, and sort of a lot of positive, negative light versus dark imagery.
One of my favorite scenes to light in this film was when Anne arrives at the poorhouse. I wanted to give it almost a surreal effect that enhanced kind of reality that Anne must be going through to suddenly be thrust into this world. So I wanted it to stand out visually, to give it a sense of there's something really different here. There really is a sense of change in her life.
My sort of world that I try and create is to populate it visually for an audience to feel those emotions, hopefully, that the actor is going through. Young Anne going through the worst turmoil of her life as a child growing up, hopefully is a dark, ugly world that I've created that an audience doesn't want to live in, and neither should Anne. And sort of going through the emotional swing, I'm trying to give those cues to the audience visually.
We had to combine a lot of green screen elements along with just the typical live action shooting. But sometimes it's challenging when you suddenly, in the middle of this period movie, you have to drop in this big, giant green or blue square that obviously is completely out of place on this set. A lot of times it gets in the way of your lighting, especially in a period piece where you're trying to light a certain way to maintain a certain continuity lighting, and this big green flat wall that could be anywhere from 4x4 to 20x20 suddenly gets in the way, and you have to kind of work around that, and you have to tell yourself that ultimately this green flat is your friend, because it's going to continue that illusion of telling the story of this period story.
In the art department, you look at those key scenes that are going to have the biggest impact and where the action takes place, and try and recreate those to their fullest extent. And the fortunate thing we have today is technology that takes, you know, what I can create visually in front of the camera to a bigger extent through CGI, post-production effects, which expands the world that I get to create, and with their help, create an even larger world that we would never be able to build on a back lot or on a soundstage.
I could really understand why there is a need for visual effects in this period film when the technology exists today, where you can do it through an extremely realistic looking matte painting, or as Kevin did, using actual photographs that get placed into the background that have period elements in them, or they're geographic elements that tie in to the story.
The challenge that every production comes in against is that, does the one set do everything that we need it to do for what's called for in the screenplay? And the ultimate answer is always no. So what we ultimately do is try and find the great location that sells the look that we're after. And then from that is our sort of palette and our drawing board for all the other sets that have to be attached to it. We try and find the elements in the real world that we can shoot, and then we have to then bring those back and create them in the studio.
We were mixing some sets along with some locations. So in a sense, it was a puzzle piece. When you look at it, it all blends seamlessly, but putting the puzzle together and maintaining that light continuity was quite challenging in order to make sure that it didn't jostle the viewer out of the film. When they're involved in the story, you don't want to take them out of that story.
Probably the strongest driving force for any of Kevin's projects of a period nature, whether they're Anne or variation thereof, is Kevin himself. You know, he's got the strong vision of the look and the feel, and a vast knowledge on it. He comes with the full package to start with and spreads that down throughout all the departments. That's the strongest force, I think, that carries these shows. Hopefully myself and anybody else who has the chance to work on them brings our own ability and helps, you know, strive a little further and raise it up a notch as well with the help of Kevin.
We sat down and watched a couple of films. We watched older episodes of Anne of Green Gables and a couple of Kevin's earlier films. And it did help to give me a sense of what kind of lighting Kevin likes, what his sensibilities are to cinema, what his sensibilities are to lighting, to contrast. He has shot a lot of period piece, and it was helpful in knowing these sensibilities and what my requirements and what my responsibilities were in this film.
The two-edged sword with working with Kevin is that, one, he's got such a strong idea of what he'd like to get on film from the page, that my energy is spent trying to push everything we've got to get to that point. There's probably more scenes than we ever want to film in one shooting day or one whole sequence, but Kevin's got the energy to do it and he pushes for it. He has a great ability, though, to know that when he comes up against a wall, he's quick to narrow it down. He'll find, you know, a nice little corner that with just a little bit of paint here or something, a little magic, he makes it work. And as I say, it's a sort of two-edged sword sometimes. You're taking more than you want to do, but on the other hand, he'll give it back, and it's great.
To me, it was a really fascinating experience. When I was actually hired to do it, it was quite thrilling because it was kind of a dream come true for me to finally be able to shoot a period piece. There's very little room for laziness on anybody's part because you have to remain so faithful to the period in order to make it realistic to the audience.
When I get to work with the creative people, that's when I get excited about the scenes that we're going to do. I don't come to the script with predetermined vision of, you know, what's going to be the most exciting. It starts with the page and then it expands with all the people, creative people that come involved, and we get to create a whole new world for the audience to enjoy.
Christopher Columbus! I must be dreaming!
You certainly are. There's no need to be nasty, Violetta.
Cut!